The moment she said she needed time, your chest tightened before your mind could react. Not because she raised her voice. Not because she sounded angry. It was the opposite. Her voice was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that makes you believe everything is under control, even when it's already slipping through your fingers. You remember how quickly you try to make sense of it. You told yourself this was healthy, mature, that strong relationships pause sometimes, not because they're breaking, but because they're growing. You nodded like someone who understood, even though your heart had already started whispering fears you didn't want to hear. You look back now and see how solid your life felt with her in it. The routines mattered more than you realized. The way mornings started the same. The messages that didn't need explaining. The trust that felt so normal you stopped protecting it. You believed unbreakable things didn't need guarding. You believed love, once built, could sit safely on autopilot. But that day, something inside you shifted. You felt it. A pressure behind the ribs. A quiet panic. You sensed distance forming, but you swallowed it down because you didn't want to be the insecure one. You didn't want to question her honesty or your worth. So you wrapped your fear in patience and called it love. You told yourself you were the kind of person who believes in waiting. That real love survives silence. That time apart doesn't mean falling apart. You want to be strong, understanding, different from the people who panic and push. So you stayed quiet, even when the silence started hurting more than words ever could. You noticed the small things. How she didn't hold your gaze as long. How her answers were softer, shorter. How her body was present, but her attention wasn't. Every instinct in you asked for clarity, but you chose hope instead. You convinced yourself that questioning her would only make things worse. So you smiled. You reassured her. You told her you understood. There was a moment when someone tried to pull you back to reality. Adnan didn't accuse her. He didn't sound dramatic. He just asked you to be careful. He told you that sometimes time doesn't mean rest. It means exit. You laughed it off. You defended her without hesitation, because believing him would have meant facing a truth you weren't ready for. You wanted to believe that patience was proof of depth, that waiting was strength, that love meant trusting even when your gut was screaming. So you ignored the signs, not because you were blind, but because seeing them would have broken the version of the future you were holding on to. When she finally walked away that day, she didn't slam a door. She didn't cry. She promised she'd come back stronger, clearer, more sure. And you believed every word because you needed to. You stood there, telling yourself this was temporary, telling yourself love doesn't disappear, it just pauses. But what you didn't realize then is that some pauses aren't meant to resume. Some silences aren't tests of patience, they're warnings. And the moment she turned her back, something important stayed behind with you. Not her, the illusion. You didn't lose her that day. You lost the certainty you once had. And even though you couldn't name it yet, that was the beginning of everything changing. Silence doesn't arrive all at once. It creeps in slowly, pretending to be temporary. At first, it's just a delayed reply, then an unread message, then a whole night where your phone stays dark, and you tell yourself she must be tired, busy, overwhelmed. You start memorizing excuses like they're facts, because the truth feels too dangerous to touch. You read your messages again and again, checking if you said something wrong. You notice how careful your words have become. Shorter, kinda, safer. You don't want to sound needy. You don't want to be the reason she feels pressured. So you wait. And while you wait, you convince yourself that this is what trust looks like. Inside your head, there's a constant conversation. One voice asks why someone who cares would disappear like this. The other voice shuts it down immediately. You tell yourself that mature love doesn't demand constant reassurance. That real connection doesn't panic in quiet moments. You start wearing her silence like a badge of honor, as if enduring it proves your depth. Days pass, and her replies come late, carefully neutral. No emotion, no warmth, just enough to keep hope alive. And you cling to that hope because without it, everything collapses. You tell yourself that questioning her would make you weak, that trusting her, even when it hurts, makes you strong. Sarah notices before you admit it to yourself. She doesn't accuse her. She doesn't push. She just says you seem tired, distant. She tells you relationships shouldn't feel this heavy. Her words are soft, vague enough for you to ignore. You nod. You smile. You change the subject. Because listening would mean admitting that something is wrong, and you're not ready for that. Your mother senses it too. She hears it in your voice, sees it in the way you stare at your phone instead of the room. She asks simple questions, the kind that cut deep without trying. Are you okay? Are you eating? You brush her off gently. You tell her everything is fine. You don't want her worry to turn into doubt, because doubt is contagious. Love starts changing shape without you noticing. It stops being shared moments and becomes waiting. Waiting for replies. Waiting for clarity. Waiting for the version of her that feels familiar. Your days revolve around pauses. Every vibration of your phone spikes your heart. Every silence drains you a little more. At work, your body is present, but your mind isn't. You read the same screen without understanding it. You replay conversations that already ended. You imagine future ones that may never happen. Still, when someone mentions her, you defend her instantly. You protect her image like it's fragile glass. You make her absence sound intentional, meaningful. You refuse to let anyone see the cracks. Deep down, you know something is wrong. You feel it when nights get too quiet, when your thoughts get loud, when you start questioning your worth instead of her behavior. But instead of confronting it, you double down on patience. You tell yourself love is sacrifice. You tell yourself this pain has purpose. What you don't realize yet is how slowly you're disappearing. How much of yourself you're shrinking to make room for uncertainty. You stop asking for what you need. You stop trusting your instincts. You start measuring your value by how long you can endure being ignored. This is where dependency begins. Not with obsession, but with justification. With defending someone's absence more passionately than they defend your presence. With choosing hope over honesty again and again. And in that moment, when you tell yourself waiting is loyalty, when you call silence maturity, when you confuse patience with love, you make a quiet decision. You choose to stay. You choose to believe. You choose to wait. It feels noble. It feels strong. But it's the moment you trade self-respect for illusion. And you won't understand the cost of that choice until it's already taken everything. It starts with something small. So small you almost miss it. A detail that doesn't line up. A sentence that contradicts another one she said weeks ago. Nothing dramatic. Nothing you could point to and say, this is it. Just a quiet crack in the story you've been telling yourself. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Your first instinct isn't anger. It's confusion. You replay her words again and again. Try to fix them so they make sense. You tell yourself you misunderstood. That memory can be unreliable. That stress changes timelines. You do everything except the one thing that feels dangerous, questioning her. Instead, you turn inward. You interrogate yourself like you're the problem. You ask why you're suddenly so alert, so suspicious. You tell yourself you're overthinking. You promise yourself you won't ruin something good with doubt. And yet, the crack stays there, spreading quietly every time you try to ignore it. Nights become longer. Sleep turns shallow and restless. You wake up with thoughts already racing, your mind replaying conversations you didn't even know mattered until now. You imagine different explanations, different realities, different endings. You hate how quickly your brain jumps to worst-case scenarios, and you hate yourself even more for not being able to stop it. Adnan notices the change before you admit it. This time, he doesn't soften his words. He tells you to prepare yourself. He tells you pain is coming whether you look at it or not. He doesn't sound cruel, just honest. And that honesty feels like betrayal. You pull away from him emotionally. You stop sharing details. You don't want his warnings poisoning what little hope you still have. You tell yourself he doesn't understand your relationship. You tell yourself he's projecting his own fears. You build a wall between his concern and your heart, because listening to him would mean letting go of the version of her you're still clinging to. Then it happens, not in a dramatic confrontation, but in a casual sentence that lands heavier than it should. Your office manager mentions seeing her somewhere unexpected. The way he says it is relaxed, unimportant. But your body reacts before your mind does. Your stomach drops. Your chest tightens. Time slows down around a single thought you don't want to have. Jealousy shows up for the first time, sharp and unfamiliar. And almost immediately, guilt follows. You shame yourself for feeling it. You tell yourself jealousy means insecurity, that trusting people don't feel this way, that love shouldn't be possessive. You blame yourself instead of asking why the feeling appeared at all. This is where the war begins, not outside but inside you. One side is intuition, quiet but persistent, repeating that something isn't right. The other side is attachment, louder, emotional, terrified of loss. Intuition asks questions. Attachment silences them. Intuition wants clarity. Attachment wants comfort. And every day, attachment keeps winning. You find yourself watching more closely, reading messages with a different eye, listening for what isn't said. And every time you notice something off, you rush to explain it away. You're exhausted from defending a reality that keeps slipping through your hands. The truth is, you're not afraid of what you might find out. You're afraid of what it will confirm. Because once you know, you can't go back to pretending. And pretending has been the only thing holding you together. You realize something painful in those quiet hours before sleep. You're not searching for proof because you don't trust her. You're searching because you don't trust yourself anymore. Your mind is fraying under the weight of uncertainty. Your heart can't take the waiting, the guessing, the self-betrayal. So you make a decision, not out of anger, not out of suspicion, but out of survival. You decide to look for the truth, whatever it is. Not to accuse, not to confront, just to breathe again, just to stop fighting yourself every waking moment. This isn't the moment you stop loving her. It's the moment you stop abandoning yourself. And once that line is crossed, nothing stays the same. You weren't supposed to meet him like this. Not like a scene pulled straight from your worst imagination. You weren't prepared for how ordinary the moment would look from the outside, how quiet devastation can be. You see them before you understand what you're seeing. Your body reacts first. Your heartbeat stumbles, then pounds hard enough to feel in your throat. Your hands start to shake, not violently, but enough that you notice. Enough that you realize something inside you already knows what your mind is still trying to deny. They're standing close, not intimate in a way that screams guilt, but comfortable in a way that whispers history. And then she laughs. Not the polite laugh she used with you in recent months. Not the tired smile she offered when words felt forced. This laugh is loose, unprotected. It comes from somewhere deep, like she isn't guarding herself at all. That's when you see him properly. Hamza, confident without trying. Relaxed like he belongs exactly where he's standing. He doesn't lean in too much. He doesn't perform. He just exists, solid, familiar, unafraid. The kind of presence that doesn't ask for permission. The kind you realize she hasn't had to explain herself around. You feel small in a way you've never felt before. Not because of him, but because of what this moment says about you. About how long you've been waiting. About how carefully you've been protecting a story that was already over. She notices you a second too late. There's a flicker in her eyes, surprise, then calculation, then something you don't stay long enough to name. There's no shouting, no running after you, no dramatic collapse of truth. Just silence. Thick, heavy, humiliating silence that stretches between the three of you. You turn away before your face betrays you, before your eyes fill, before your body does something you can't take back. Each step feels unreal, like you're moving through water. Sounds dull. Colors flatten. The world doesn't stop. It just stops including you. You expect pain to crash into you immediately. You expect tears, anger, some kind of release. But none of that comes. There's just emptiness. A hollow calm that scares you more than heartbreak ever could. It's like something inside you shuts off to survive. As you walk, your mind keeps replaying details you wish you hadn't noticed. The way she stood, the ease between them, the absence of hesitation. You realize this isn't new. This isn't something that started after she asked for time. This is something that required space you gave her willingly. And suddenly, everything makes sense in the most brutal way. The silence, the delayed replies, the distance dressed up as growth. The patience you were so proud of wasn't maturity. It was access. It gave her room to step into another life without resistance. You don't feel rage yet. You don't feel betrayal the way movies describe it. You feel exposed. Like everyone else knew the truth, except you. Like your loyalty became something quietly laughable. Like your restraint didn't make you noble, it made you convenient. Your chest tightens, but still, no tears. Just pressure. Just weight. Just the sick realization that you were holding on to hope while she was holding on to someone else. You think about all the moments you defended her. All the times you silenced your instincts. All the nights you chose patience over dignity. And for the first time, you see it clearly, not with bitterness, but with devastating clarity. Her need for time was never about healing. It wasn't about confusion or growth or finding herself. It was about transition, about moving from one place to another without collision, about keeping you calm while she got comfortable elsewhere. That realization lands quietly, but it changes everything. You don't collapse on the sidewalk. You don't scream into the night. You just keep walking, carrying a truth that finally has weight. A truth that doesn't need proof anymore. A truth that explains every unanswered message, every avoided question, every crack you refuse to see. This is the moment innocence ends. Not love, innocence. The belief that patience alone can protect you. The belief that silence is neutral. The belief that waiting makes you safe. You weren't supposed to meet him, but now that you have, you understand something you couldn't before. The story you were living wasn't paused. It was already rewritten without you in it. You finally say it out loud. Not the accusation, the question. Your voice doesn't shake the way you thought it would. It sounds tired, like a part of you already knows the answer and just needs to hear it spoken, so the pretending can stop. She doesn't deny it. That's what hurts first. There's no dramatic pause, no outrage, no attempt to flip the blame onto you. She exhales slowly, like someone who's been waiting for this moment. And then she starts explaining, carefully, softly, as if the right words might still protect you from the damage. She says she was confused. She says she felt lonely even when you were there. She says she didn't know how to talk to you anymore. Every sentence is calm, reasonable, almost logical. And with each one, something inside you folds in on itself. You don't interrupt. You just listen. Because stopping her won't change what's already happened. She tells you it wasn't planned. That it just happened. That she didn't mean to hurt you. She says she needed space and didn't know how else to take it. And you realize how strange it is. How explanations can feel worse than lies. Lies would have made her the villain. Explanations turn you into collateral damage. You feel yourself shrinking with every word. Not because she's yelling. Not because she's cruel. But because she's talking about your relationship like it was something vague. Optional. Replaceable. Like your presence was never solid enough to lean on. You ask when it started. She hesitates. That hesitation answers more than her words ever could. You think about all the nights you waited, all the patience you offered, all the times you chose understanding over asking for more. And now, sitting here, you understand the most painful truth of all. While you were learning how to love her better, she was learning how to live without you. She says she didn't want to lose you. That sentence almost breaks you, because now you see it clearly. She didn't want to lose your comfort, your loyalty, your silence. She wanted you close enough to soften the guilt, but far enough not to interfere. Later, Sarah tries to help in the only way she knows how. She tells you people make mistakes, that emotions are complicated, that it doesn't mean she never cared. You nod. You don't argue, but something in you hardens. Because care that arrives after damage isn't care, it's explanation. You stop trying to make sense of it emotionally. You're too tired for that. Your chest feels bruised from holding everything in. You don't cry. You don't shout. You just feel emptied out, like the part of you that used to fight for answers has finally given up. Your father doesn't ask questions. He doesn't analyze. He doesn't tell you what you should have done differently. He just sits with you in the quiet, noticing what you're not saying. And then, almost casually, he says one sentence that stays lodged in your chest. He tells you that love doesn't require you to disappear. That's it. No lecture. No advice. Just that. And suddenly, everything you've been feeling has a shape. You realize how small you made yourself, trying to keep someone else comfortable. How often you silenced your needs to protect her feelings. How you begged internally, even when your mouth stayed quiet. When you speak to her again, you don't ask for closure. You don't demand reassurance. You don't plead for honesty you already have. You choose something that surprises even you. You choose silence, not the kind that punishes, the kind that preserves what's left of you. You stop explaining your pain. You stop asking her to understand what she already chose not to protect. You don't give her the relief of seeing you break any further. It's not strength that guides you in that moment. It's exhaustion, a deep, bone-level understanding that begging won't restore what's been dismantled piece by piece. This is where the illusions finally die. The belief that patience fixes everything. The belief that loving harder earns loyalty. The belief that explanations heal wounds. They don't. And as you walk away from that conversation, quieter than you arrived, heavier than you expected, you understand something you couldn't before. Some answers don't bring peace. They just tell you it's time to stop asking. Rock bottom doesn't announce itself with drama. It speaks quietly in the moments when you stop answering calls, when the room feels safer than people, when getting out of bed feels like negotiation instead of instinct. You don't collapse all at once. You shrink. You pull inward. You disappear in pieces. Shame becomes your shadow, not because of what she did, but because of how replaceable you suddenly feel. Like everything you offered was easily exchanged. Like your loyalty was a temporary solution, not a loss. That thought eats at you the most. Not anger, not hatred, just the dull realization that someone else stepped into your place without effort. You stop seeing friends. You don't want the questions. You don't want the looks that say they already know. You let calls ring until the silence feels heavier than the conversation ever would. Even when someone reaches out, you don't know what version of yourself to send back. The strong one feels fake. The broken one feels like too much. So you stay alone. Your mind becomes a loop. You replay memories without mercy. The early days, the way she used to look at you. The version of yourself that believed love made you safer, not smaller. You analyze every choice, every silence, every moment you ignored your instincts. Sleep doesn't help. Dreams just rearrange the pain. That's when Dr. Rayhan enters your life. Not as hope, but as obligation. Someone suggests him. You go without belief. You sit across from him with crossed arms and rehearsed answers. You don't think talking will fix anything. You think this pain is logical, earned, permanent. At first, you speak carefully. You describe events, not feelings. You explain what happened without admitting what it did to you. He listens without interrupting, which somehow feels more uncomfortable than judgment. Silence has followed you long enough. Now it's sitting across from you again. Then he asks a question you weren't prepared for. Not about her, about you. He asks what scared you most, losing her or being alone. The room feels smaller. Your throat tightens. You try to answer quickly, confidently, but the words don't come out clean. Because somewhere deep inside, you already know the truth you've been avoiding. Therapy doesn't break you in one moment. It wears you down. It forces you to say things out loud that you've been hiding behind logic. You admit how much of yourself you wrapped around her presence. How silence terrified you more than disrespect. How waiting felt safer than being abandoned. You realize something painful. You weren't just afraid of losing her. You were afraid of facing yourself without someone to lean on. That admission hurts more than the betrayal ever did. Because now the story changes. This isn't just about what she chose. It's about what you tolerated, what you accepted, what you explained away because the alternative felt too empty to survive. You see how slowly you gave pieces of yourself up, how you traded honesty for peace, how you learned to stay quiet to keep connection. None of it felt wrong at the time. It felt like love. It felt like compromise. It felt like maturity. But sitting there, speaking the truth for the first time, you feel something shift. Not relief, not strength, but clarity. There is no revenge in this chapter. No transformation montage. Just survival. Just learning how to sit with pain without turning it into hope. Just learning how to breathe without waiting for someone else to return. You walk out of those sessions heavier than when you walked in, but also more real. The numbness starts cracking. Not into anger, into grief. And grief, as painful as it is, at least means you're still here. One night, alone with your thoughts, you finally say it without flinching. You didn't lose her first. You lost yourself trying to keep her. And that realization lands hard, because it means the damage started long before the goodbye. Revenge doesn't arrive like rage. It arrives like opportunity. It shows up quietly, disguised as justice, as balance, as the chance to finally feel powerful after months of feeling small. And when it comes, you recognize it instantly, because a part of you has been waiting for it. You could hurt her now, not physically, not loudly, but in the ways that linger. You know things. You have access. A few words in the right ears, a carefully timed truth, a subtle exposure. And the image she's built could crack the same way yours did. For the first time since everything fell apart, the control feels like it's back in your hands. Adnan stands beside you, supportive but cautious. He doesn't stop you. He just says one thing that sticks longer than he knows. He tells you that revenge feels powerful at first, but it keeps the wound open. He reminds you that once you strike, you don't get to decide what it turns you into. You nod, but you're not really listening yet. Because the temptation is loud. It feels justified. You imagine the relief, her discomfort, her confusion, the way she might finally feel exposed. You tell yourself it wouldn't be cruelty, just fairness, just returning the pain. For a moment, it feels intoxicating, like standing on the edge of something that could finally make the suffering mean something. Like this could be the moment where the story flips and you're no longer the one who lost. Then the moment actually comes. You're there. The opening is real, easy, almost handed to you. All you have to do is step forward and speak. And suddenly, something unexpected happens. You feel tired, not weak, not scared, just deeply, completely tired. You realize that even now, even with the power to hurt her, she's still at the center of the decision. Your next move would still revolve around her reaction, her image, her fall. Revenge wouldn't free you from her. It would tie you back to her in a new way, just as consuming. You see it clearly in that pause. Revenge doesn't erase pain. It preserves it. It gives it a job. It makes it part of your identity. You think about the months you spent shrinking, waiting, explaining. You think about how much of your energy she already took without asking. And in that moment, the idea of giving her even more, even through revenge, feels like another loss. So you don't act. You step back from the edge, not because you forgive her and not because she deserves mercy, but because you deserve distance. You deserve a life that doesn't require her suffering to feel whole. It doesn't feel heroic. There's no rush, no applause, just a quiet decision that surprises even you. Adnan notices. He doesn't smile. He just nods, like he understands something shifted. After that, things start changing in ways you didn't plan. You hear things through others. Tension in her circle. Questions she can't answer cleanly. Stories that don't land the way she expects. You don't celebrate it. You don't intervene. You just watch from afar as consequences unfold without your involvement. That's when you understand something important. Karma doesn't need your hands. It works slower, but works deeper. It doesn't just punish actions. It exposes patterns. And for the first time, you're not part of that pattern anymore. Strength doesn't announce itself either. It doesn't feel like confidence or victory. It feels like restraint, like choosing not to poison yourself just because someone else handed you the cup. You start focusing on quieter things. Your sleep improves. Your thoughts stop looping around imagined confrontations. You catch yourself going hours without thinking about her, and that scares you at first. Then it relieves you. This is the turning point, even if it doesn't look like one. Not because the pain is gone, but because it no longer controls your direction. You're no longer reacting. You're choosing. You didn't win by hurting her back. You won by refusing to let her pain become your purpose. And in that choice, calm, unseen, uncelebrated, you finally step out of the story where she was the center. Not with destruction, with dignity. The first time you hear about her struggles, it isn't from anyone trying to hurt you. No one approaches with triumph or whispered malice. It comes softly, almost by accident. A friend mentions it in passing. An old acquaintance shrugs while describing something she's been dealing with. Hamza isn't what she believed him to be, and the news lands quietly in your chest. You feel nothing sharp, no pleasure, no vindication, just distance. A space opens where obsession used to live, And for the first time in months, you notice it. You're not relieved. You're not curious. You're simply removed, like someone observing a scene that no longer includes them. It surprises you how little drama accompanies the truth. Her failures aren't cinematic. They aren't perfect karmic payback. Life isn't a movie, and pain isn't poetic. She struggles in small, mundane ways, frustrations, misunderstandings, loneliness disguised in distraction. The world moves on, indifferent. And slowly, without fanfare, you realize that this is what healing looks like too. Slow, boring, ordinary. You start to notice the silence where she used to fill your thoughts. You don't need to check messages, read between lines, or construct excuses for someone else's choices. The freedom isn't loud. It isn't obvious. It's subtle, almost imperceptible. You begin to rebuild your routines quietly, without announcements, without pressure. Morning coffee tastes sharper. Walks feel longer, clearer. Work doesn't feel like a placeholder. It feels like space to exist fully. Friendships, too, start to bloom where neglect had taken root. People who were always there, waiting for you to return from your spiral, slowly notice that you're coming back. You laugh again, softly at first. The jokes feel lighter, not attempts to distract yourself. Conversations flow without effort, and you realize that connection can exist without compromise, without self-erasure. Even your self-respect, long buried under months of patient waiting and self-justification, begins to return. You recognize the things you tolerated before, silence, distance, excuses, and you no longer feel compelled to excuse them. You don't dwell on her choices. You just notice them, catalog them in memory, and let them settle there, unimportant to your daily existence. Your mother notices first. She doesn't comment on your past pain. She doesn't ask for explanations. She just observes the posture of someone returning to themselves. The way you move, speak, and respond carries a new weight, quiet strength, not bravado. It isn't performative. It isn't meant to impress. It's the result of living through the collapse of everything that once defined you and walking out the other side. The past loses its power in subtle increments. You remember the fear, the despair, the nights of questioning, the moments of humiliation, and yet they feel less like chains and more like lessons you weren't ready to hear before. You see them as coordinates on a map you were forced to follow, not a trap you willingly stepped into. There's no celebration, no dramatic, "I've moved on" announcement. Growth rarely arrives that way. It arrives in routines, in regained attention to yourself, in noticing that the thought of her doesn't hijack your mornings. It arrives when you stop measuring your worth by someone else's choices and instead feel it through the steadiness of your own life. You understand, too, that life moves quietly when you stop holding grudges. The world doesn't punish or reward in the ways you imagined. It simply keeps going. And when you let it, so do you. Distance becomes your ally. Calm becomes your baseline. And the emptiness that once screamed with her absence now hums with possibility. You aren't indifferent to everything, but you're indifferent to the parts of her that once dominated your existence. You've reclaimed your center. Healing isn't dramatic. It isn't pointed. It isn't designed for anyone to notice. It's boring, repetitive, and profoundly liberating. And in that quiet liberation, the past finally loses its grip. You're no longer defined by her, by what she did, or by the waiting you endured. You exist outside that story, and it feels steady, real, and entirely your own. Looking back to the person you were in Chapter 1 feels almost like looking at a stranger. The version of yourself who believed that patience alone could hold someone close. The version who silenced instincts, swallowed fear, and defined love by absence rather than presence. You remember the hope you clung to, the trust you gave blindly, and the way you convinced yourself that enduring silence was noble. That version of you carried loyalty like armor, even as it hollowed you out from the inside. Now, you see the difference. Not because life suddenly feels perfect, or because pain has vanished, but because you've lived through it. You've faced the emptiness, the betrayal, the nights when your own heart felt like a stranger. You've spoken truths aloud that you avoided for months. You've watched the temptation of revenge pass and realized that freedom isn't in hurting someone else. It's in reclaiming yourself. And slowly, piece by piece, you've found who you are when no one else is holding your story for you. The lessons are not neatly packaged. They don't come with a clear moral or a tidy ending. They come in subtle shapes. You learn that waiting doesn't prove love, that silence can be more damaging than words, that hope can sometimes be a cage. You realize that protecting someone else's image at the cost of your own peace is not sacrifice, it's self-erasure. And most importantly, you understand that your presence in your own life is not optional. You don't need permission to exist fully, to demand honesty, to choose dignity. You also understand that pain doesn't disappear because you decide it should. It lingers like scars, and that's not a flaw. It's proof. Proof that you lived fully, that you allowed yourself to feel, to endure, and to grow. Each scar carries a lesson. Each moment of despair carries evidence that you were brave enough to stay present in your own life when everything else was collapsing. You think about the people still waiting, the ones holding on to messages that go unanswered, silences that stretch too long, promises that were never meant to hold. You speak to them now, not from a place of judgment, but from experience. You tell them, gently, that patience has its limits, that enduring absence isn't proof of love or strength, that sometimes the person who asked for time isn't coming back in the way you imagined, and that doesn't make you weak or unworthy or less deserving of presence. Acceptance isn't easy. You don't forgive everything overnight. You don't erase the past, but you stop letting it define your present. You stop using someone else's choices to measure your worth. You carry the memory of what happened without carrying its weight. You feel it, learn from it, and let it settle instead of letting it fester. And in that space, quiet confidence grows. Emotional maturity settles like a calm you didn't know you could reach. You are still scarred, and you are still human. But you are also steady, centered, and complete in a way you weren't before. Strength isn't loud here. It isn't demonstrated through victories over others. It's the quiet knowledge that you survived, that you still choose yourself, and that your life doesn't hinge on someone who walked away. You didn't lose her. That version of the story belonged to someone else. You found yourself instead, a version stronger, wiser, and undeniably yours. Not perfect, not unmarked by pain, but real, whole, able to exist fully without depending on her return. And for the first time in a long time, you walk forward with certainty. Not because the past is gone, but because it no longer rules you. Not because life is easy, but because you've built yourself sturdy enough to face it. Scars intact, lessons learned, self-reclaimed. You didn't lose her. You found yourself.